I was standing in my office, a glass of bourbon in my hand, when my entire life cracked open in a single, brutal instant. My phone buzzed, and at first, I ignored it. But then another message came in, and something in me told me to look. It was from Ethan, my oldest friend, the kind of guy who never sugarcoated anything. The message read, "Ryan, I don't know how else to say this. I saw Madison leaving a hotel downtown with her lawyer, Daniel Cole. They weren't holding briefcases. They were holding hands." The glass slipped from my hand, shattering on the hardwood. Bourbon bled across the floor like some kind of metaphor for everything I was about to lose. My wife, Madison, wasn't just betraying me with another man. She was betraying me with a lawyer, the exact kind of slick bastard who could draft the paperwork to bleed me dry. My chest tightened, but I didn't yell. I didn't run to confront her. Instead, I sat down at my desk, opened my laptop, and began digging. It didn't take long. Madison was careless. Her emails were synced to our home network. Within minutes, I was reading messages that felt like bullets tearing through my ribs. "Daniel, once Ryan is out of the picture, we'll have everything. You said the divorce could make me walk away with at least half. I don't care how dirty it gets, just make sure it's fast. He's too trusting, he won't see it coming." Every sentence was like a knife. My wife, the woman who smiled at me every morning, the one I built a life with, wasn't just cheating, she was plotting to gut me alive. $700 million on the line, and she thought I was blind. I sat there for what felt like hours, scrolling through her lies. Photos attached. Madison with her fake smile pressed against Daniel's chest, both of them drunk on champagne in some hotel room. She was half-dressed, him smirking at the camera like he already owned my empire. But here's the thing, I didn't scream. I didn't break. Something inside me clicked, sharper than rage, colder than grief. If Madison thought she could outsmart me, she had no idea who she was really married to. That night, when she came home, she acted normal. She kicked off her heels, tossed her purse on the counter, and kissed me on the cheek like nothing was happening. "How was your day, baby?" she asked, in that sugar-coated tone that now made me sick. I looked at her, really looked, and I saw the fraud behind the mask. She wasn't my wife anymore. She was a vulture circling a man she thought was about to collapse. "Good," I replied calmly, sipping another drink. "Very productive." She didn't notice the way I was staring at her. She didn't notice the files already open on my laptop in the other room. Madison was arrogant, careless, and full of herself. And that arrogance was going to bury her. That same night, when she fell asleep beside me, pretending to be the loving wife, I got to work. I called my financial advisor, Charles. He was discreet, loyal, and had been with me for over 15 years. At 2 in the morning, we were already transferring assets, restructuring holdings, moving money into places she couldn't even dream of reaching. By sunrise, my $699 million empire wasn't where she thought it was. Madison was going to file for divorce thinking she'd walk away with half a kingdom. She didn't know the kingdom had already moved, brick by brick, gold bar by gold bar, right out from under her. The irony almost made me laugh. 1 week later, just as I knew she would, Madison filed. She sat across from me at the dining table, sipping coffee, her nails freshly done, her perfume too strong. She tried to look calm, but I saw the smugness in her smirk. "I filed today," she said coldly, without even blinking. "Daniel says I'm entitled to half. Don't make this harder than it has to be, Ryan. Just sign, and we can keep things clean." I looked at her, leaned back in my chair, and let her words wash over me like static. She really believed she had won. But here's where everything began to unravel for her, because when Daniel came back to her a few days later with the news, Madison's mask cracked. She panicked. Her voice went shrill, her texts to him became frantic. Her perfect little plan had completely backfired. And for the first time in weeks, I smiled. This wasn't just betrayal. This was war. She slammed the door that night, the heels of her shoes clicking against the tile like gunshots. I was sitting in the living room, deliberately waiting. The divorce papers she thought would crush me were already tucked into a folder on the coffee table. I didn't look up when she entered, not at first. I wanted her to stew in the silence, to feel the air tighten around her before I even spoke. "Ryan, why are you sitting here in the dark?" she asked, her tone sharp, annoyed, as if I was the inconvenience in her perfect schedule. I turned my head slowly, and the look on her face told me everything. She wasn't nervous. She wasn't ashamed. She was smug. Confident. She thought she had me cornered like a dog with its back against the wall. "Where were you, Madison?" I asked quietly. She rolled her eyes. "Don't start. I told you I had dinner with friends." I leaned forward, letting my elbows rest on my knees. "Funny," I said, because I checked. "Those friends haven't seen you in weeks. So who were you really with? Daniel?" Her face didn't even flinch. She smirked, crossed her arms, and laughed. "Oh, so Ethan has been running his mouth again, hasn't he? That pathetic drunk will say anything to get attention." The way she dismissed my best friend's honesty with such venom made my blood boil. But I didn't shout. I didn't rise to her level. I simply pulled my phone from my pocket, opened her emails, and slid it across the table. Her hand twitched as she glanced down at the screen. There, in glowing white text, were her words, her promises to Daniel, her plans to take everything I built. She stared at it for a beat, and then, instead of apologizing, instead of breaking down, she laughed again. "You think this means anything?" she hissed. "You think you can just wave a couple of emails in my face and scare me? Ryan, you're a fool. You always have been. I married you for your money. Did you really believe it was for love?" Her words hit me like steel claws tearing through flesh, but I didn't let her see it. I swallowed the hurt, the humiliation, the rage. I looked into her eyes and saw nothing but a stranger, cold, venomous, a predator who thought she had already won. "You already filed," I said evenly. "You think you're walking out with half. You're not." Now it was her turn to falter. A crack in the mask. Her brows pulled together, confusion flickering across her face. "What the hell are you talking about?" "I moved everything, Madison. Every account, every holding, every cent. By the time you sat in Daniel's office filing those papers, there wasn't a dime in your reach. You can't touch me. You can't touch my money. You're going to walk away with nothing." The silence that followed was deafening. Her smirk vanished, her lips parting as her breath caught. She tried to recover, tried to sneer, but it came out trembling. You're bluffing," she spat. "You wouldn't know how to. Don't underestimate me," I cut her off, my voice sharp enough to slice through the room. "You thought you were the only one capable of playing dirty? I was 10 steps ahead of you the entire time. While you were sneaking around with your slimeball lawyer, I was building walls you can't climb. You wanted war. Congratulations. You got it." Her eyes blazed, her nails digging into her palms. She lunged for my phone, but I yanked it back before she could touch it. "This isn't over," she growled. "Daniel will find a way. I'll find a way." "No," I said, standing now, towering over her. "It is over. You've exposed yourself for what you are. You're not a wife, not a partner, you're a parasite. And parasites get cut off." She slapped me then, hard, her ring slicing across my cheek. For a moment, the sting burned hot, but all I did was smile. Because in that moment, her mask was fully gone. The bitch behind the pretty face had finally shown herself. "Get out of my house, Madison, I said coldly. Take whatever clothes you can carry, because that's all you're leaving with. Everything else stays here. With me. Her voice cracked. Sharp and shrill, as she screamed curses, lies, promises of revenge. But beneath it all, I saw the panic in her eyes. She thought she had stripped me bare. Instead, she was the one standing exposed, powerless, cornered. And as she stormed upstairs to gather her things, I sat back down, poured myself another drink, and let the weight of it all settle. The woman I thought I loved was gone, replaced by a snake who wanted to poison everything I had. But snakes can be crushed. The next morning, the storm hadn't passed, it had only shifted. Madison was gone when I woke up, and the silence in the house felt heavier than her screams from the night before. But my phone told the story she thought I couldn't see. Dozens of missed calls from her, messages spilling in rapid fire. You'll regret this. Daniel will bury you. You can't just throw me away like trash. I didn't answer a single one. Instead, I drove to the office, my cheeks still sore from her slap, and prepared for what I knew was coming. By noon, it did. Daniel Cole himself walked in, slick suit, smug grin, acting like he owned the place. He didn't ask to be announced. He just barged into my conference room, uninvited, and dropped a thick folder on the table. Ryan, he said with that slimy voice, I think we can all agree it's best to handle this quickly. Madison is entitled to half, and the sooner you sign, the sooner this ends without dragging your name through the mud. I leaned back in my chair, calm as stone, and studied him like he was some insect crawling across my desk. Half of what, Daniel? I asked. His grin twitched, but he recovered quickly. Don't play games. We've reviewed your holdings, your companies, your assets. 700 million is a generous estimate, but we'll take what's fair. I slid a single sheet of paper across the table. He frowned, picked it up, and the color drained from his face. It was a confirmation of transfers, dated before Madison even filed. Accounts emptied. Holdings restructured under trusts she had no claim to. Fair, I said evenly, is not what you think it is. You see, Daniel, you two played your little game too late. By the time Madison signed that petition, she was swinging at shadows. There's nothing left for her to grab. His jaw tightened, his lawyer mask cracking just slightly. You think you're clever. But the courts won't look kindly on you moving assets to cheat your wife. I smiled thinly. The courts won't look kindly on an attorney sleeping with his client while advising her to gut her husband's estate. You've broken more ethical codes than I can count. And if you push me, Daniel, I'll make sure the bar knows about every single one of them. For the first time, he didn't have a comeback. He slammed the folder shut, muttered something under his breath, and stormed out. I knew he'd be back. Men like him didn't fold easily, but the panic in his eyes was priceless. That evening, Madison returned. She didn't knock. She stormed in like she still owned the place, her face twisted with rage. You smug bastard, she spat. Daniel says you think you can hide money from me. You think you're untouchable? I'll destroy you. I'll drag you through court until you're begging to give me half just to make it stop. I stood at the kitchen counter, calmly slicing an apple. Try, I said without looking at her. But you'll lose. Every move you make only digs the hole deeper. Keep going, Madison. Let's see how far you're willing to fall. She grabbed the knife from my hand, slammed it down on the counter, and leaned in close. Her eyes were wild, desperate, but behind them I saw fear. Real fear. She knew she was losing control. You can't do this to me, she hissed. I gave you the best years of my life. I built this marriage. I laughed, sharp and bitter. You built nothing. You leeched. You lied. You slept with another man while planning to rob me blind. You want credit for that? Her lip curled, and for a moment, she looked like she might actually strike me again. But instead, she spun on her heel, grabbed her purse, and screamed from the doorway, "This isn't over, Ryan. You'll crawl back. They always crawl back." The door slammed, rattling the walls, and I stood there, my hands trembling, not from fear, but from the sheer flood of emotion I'd been choking back. Anger, betrayal, disbelief, all of it tangled in my chest like barbed wire. And yet, under all that pain, a strange calm was taking root. She thought she was playing chess, but she was only moving pawns while I already had her king in check. The war had only just started, but I already knew how it would end. That night, the house felt haunted. Every room echoed with ghosts of Madison's laughter, her perfume still clinging to the furniture like poison. I tried to sleep, but the bed felt alien, cold, like a stage where I'd been tricked into playing the part of a fool. I stared at the ceiling for hours, the weight of it pressing down on my chest until I couldn't take it anymore. At 3 in the morning, I found myself pacing the kitchen, a glass of water in my hand, trembling as though I was coming apart. The betrayal hit harder in silence. It wasn't just the money, though 700 million is no small thing, it was her. The woman I trusted, the one who looked me in the eyes at the altar and promised forever, had been whispering those same lips into another man's ear while plotting my ruin. I thought about every moment we'd shared, every vacation, every smile at family dinners, every "I love you" she tossed so casually. Were they all lies? Had she been rehearsing her betrayal from the beginning, or did she just wake up one day and decide I was nothing but a paycheck to bleed? My chest burned. My hands shook so violently I dropped the glass, and it shattered across the floor. The sound snapped something inside me. For the first time since discovering the emails, I let myself feel it all: rage, grief, humiliation. My knees buckled, and I sank down onto the cold tile, clutching my head, gasping for air like a drowning man. I hated her. God, I hated her with every fiber of my being. But underneath that hate was a twisted ache, because no matter how vile she'd been, part of me still remembered the Madison I fell in love with. The Madison who held me after my father's funeral. The Madison who laughed until she cried when we burned the first Thanksgiving turkey. But maybe that Madison never existed. Maybe she was just the mask this bitch wore until she saw her chance to sink her claws into my fortune. By dawn, I was hollow. The sun crept in through the blinds, but it didn't warm me. I stood in the mirror, staring at the man looking back. His eyes were bloodshot, his jaw tight, his cheeks still marked from her slap. He didn't look like the Ryan who used to believe in love. He looked like a man reborn in fire. I realized then that I had two choices: let this betrayal break me, or let it sharpen me. Madison wanted to see me collapse. She wanted me broken, humiliated, begging. I wouldn't give her that satisfaction. I showered, dressed in a tailored suit, and walked into my office later that morning with a steel spine. My employees didn't know what had happened, but they felt the shift. I wasn't the same man who used to joke in hallways or linger over small talk. I was colder, sharper, untouchable. Still, the ache gnawed at me. Every time my phone buzzed, I half expected it to be her again, unleashing venom or fake apologies. And sometimes it was. One message read, "Ryan, let's talk. We don't have to end it this way." Another, "Daniel says we can renegotiate if you stop playing games." I didn't answer any of them. She wasn't looking to save us. She was trying to save herself. But that night, as I sat alone with another glass of bourbon, I finally admitted the truth to myself: Madison had already killed the marriage long before the papers. I was clinging to the corpse of something that didn't exist anymore. The love was gone. What remained was war. And in war, mercy gets you killed. The summons came faster than I expected. By the end of the week, Madison had filed motions, petitions, anything Daniel could scribble down to try and drag me into court. My attorney, Michael, dropped the stack of papers on my desk with a look of disgust. They're throwing everything at the wall to see what sticks, he said. Fraud, concealment, emotional distress, it's a circus act. I flipped through the pages, barely skimming. Every accusation was a dagger dipped in lies. Madison claimed I abused her emotionally, that I controlled her life, that she was trapped in some gilded cage. Reading her words, it was like meeting an entirely different woman, one she invented to play victim. The rage burned hot, but colder underneath it was calculation. Good, I muttered. Let them think I'm on the defensive. Michael raised an eyebrow. You've got something planned. Of course, I said, leaning back. She wanted war. I don't go to war without weapons. 2 days later, Madison showed up at the courthouse in a designer dress and sunglasses, strutting past cameras like she was auditioning for a reality show. Daniel at her side, smug as ever. Reporters shouted questions, microphones shoved in her face, and she played it perfectly, hand on chest, pretending to be wounded, tragic wife betrayed by her cruel billionaire husband. I didn't say a word. I let her spin her story, let her bask in the fake sympathy, because I knew what was coming. Inside, when the hearing began, her lies unraveled almost immediately. Michael dropped a bombshell, photographs of Madison and Daniel together, emails showing they plotted weeks before the divorce. The judge's expression turned sour as he flipped through the evidence. Madison shifted in her seat, whispering furiously to Daniel, her confidence cracking in real time. When it was my turn to speak, I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need theatrics. I looked straight at the judge and said, "Your Honor, I trusted my wife. I gave her everything she ever asked for. In return, she plotted with her lawyer to strip me of everything I built. This case isn't about fairness. It's about greed, manipulation, and betrayal." The courtroom was silent except for the scribbling of reporters. Madison's face flushed red, her jaw tight, but she couldn't stop me. After the session, she cornered me in the hallway, her voice low and venomous. "You think you've won because you embarrassed me? This isn't over, Ryan. You're not as clever as you think." I leaned in close, just enough for her to hear. "No, Madison. It's already over. The difference is you haven't accepted it yet." Her nails dug into her palm as she hissed, "I'll ruin you if it's the last thing I do." I walked away without looking back. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt the scales tip in my favor. But the truth was, the battle had only shifted. Madison wasn't the type to crawl away quietly. She'd burn the whole world before admitting she lost. That night, as I sat in my office, the city lights glowing beyond the windows, I realized something chilling. I wasn't just fighting to protect my fortune anymore. I was fighting to protect myself from the monster I had once called my wife. And monsters don't stop until you drive a stake through their heart. Madison didn't wait long to escalate. Within a week, she was on TV. Some morning talk show had her sitting there with crocodile tears in her eyes, calling me controlling and cold, painting herself as the tragic victim of a loveless marriage. She even said I neglected her, that she had no choice but to find comfort elsewhere. Watching her twist reality into some soap opera performance made my stomach churn. But the worst part wasn't what she said, it was how easily people bought it. Social media lit up with strangers calling me a monster, her supporters rallying behind her. She leaned into it, posting selfies with captions about finding her voice and living free from toxicity. Every picture was calculated, every word sharpened to stab at me. I wanted to storm out, scream, expose her for the fraud she was. But anger doesn't win wars. Strategy does. So I stayed quiet. Let her run her mouth, let her dance for cameras. Meanwhile, I was gathering ammo she didn't know existed. Ethan came through again. One night, he called me, voice low but urgent. "Ryan, you're not gonna believe this. Madison's been running up tabs at hotels under Daniel's name. They're careless. I've got receipts. By the next morning, I had copies, thousands of dollars in luxury suites. Champagne, dinners. Dates matched perfectly with the nights she told me she was at, girls' nights, or visiting her mother. The proof was airtight. Still, the betrayal gnawed at me. I'd catch myself late at night replaying her laugh in my head, remembering the way she used to curl against me when she slept. Then my stomach would twist because I knew those same nights she was sneaking out to lie in another man's arms. That's the kind of wound that doesn't just bleed, it festers. The next court date was brutal. Madison came dressed like a widow, all in black, clutching tissues like she was auditioning for sympathy. She gave a long speech about how I abandoned her emotionally, how I was never there, how money meant more to me than love. Every word was poison disguised as sorrow. Then Michael dropped the receipts on the table. "Your Honor," he said, his voice calm, while Mrs. Miller was telling this court she was a neglected wife, she was also billing five-star hotel stays with her attorney. "Here are the records. Here are the dates. And here," he said, sliding over screenshots, "are her own social media posts that line up with those same nights." The silence was crushing. Madison froze, her face pale. She tried to stammer, those were work meetings, just business dinners, but the judge's glare told her he wasn't buying it. When we left the courthouse, she exploded. She shoved me in the hallway, her voice a hiss. "How dare you embarrass me like that? You think you're winning, but you'll never get rid of me, Ryan. I'll drag this out for years. I'll ruin your reputation. I'll make sure everyone sees you for the bastard you are." I leaned in close enough for her to feel the weight of my words. "Madison, you've already ruined yourself. Every lie you tell only uncovers another truth. And when it's over, the only name people will spit on is yours." Her eyes burned with hate, and for a moment, I thought she might claw at my face right there in public. But she turned, storming off with Daniel limping behind her like a beaten dog. That night, sitting alone in my office, I poured another drink and let myself feel it for just a moment. The anger, the humiliation, the grief, they were all still there, heavy as chains. But under it, stronger than before, was something else, resolve. She wanted to destroy me. She wanted to see me crawling. Instead, I was going to make sure the whole world saw who she really was. And when the mask finally ripped off, she wouldn't just lose me or my fortune. She'd lose everything. The weeks that followed felt like a slow-motion collapse of Madison's entire facade. She threw everything she could at me, angry texts, sobbing voicemails, legal threats, but with every move, she only dug herself deeper. Daniel stopped showing up at her side in public, the whispers about his professional misconduct spreading faster than even I expected. By the time the Bar Association came sniffing around, Madison had lost her shiny lawyer lover and was left clawing alone at the walls closing in around her. She tried manipulation next. One night, she showed up at the house unannounced, pounding on the door until I opened it. Her mascara was streaked, her hair a mess, but her tone was still sharp, entitled. "Ryan, we don't have to keep doing this," she said, voice cracking. "Let's just forget the lawyers. I'll come back, we'll figure this out. You and me, like before." I laughed in her face. Not because it was funny, but because it was pathetic. Before? You mean before you plotted to gut me? Before you sold your soul to Daniel for champagne and hotel suites? That before is dead, Madison. You killed it. Her expression hardened instantly, the tears drying like they were never real. "Fine," she hissed. "If I can't have your money, I'll make sure no one ever sees you the same way again. I'll destroy your name, Ryan. People will spit when they hear it." I stepped closer, my voice low, steady. "You already destroyed the only name that mattered, yours. And the more you thrash, the faster the world sees you for what you are. A parasite. A liar. A failure. Her jaw clenched, her hands trembled, but she didn't speak. She turned and stormed out, slamming the door so hard the walls shook. That was the last time she stood on my doorstep. In court, the final blow came swift. The judge dismissed her claims, citing overwhelming evidence of fraud and misconduct. Not only did she lose her case, she was ordered to cover my legal fees. Daniel was disbarred within the month. Madison's empire of lies collapsed into dust, and for once, she had no one left to blame. The day the ruling came down, I walked out of the courthouse and felt something I hadn't in months, air that didn't taste like poison. The cameras were still there, reporters still shouting, but I didn't hear any of it. All I heard was silence. Freedom. That night, sitting in the quiet of my home, I thought back to everything, her lies, her betrayal, the rage that nearly consumed me. For weeks I'd lived like a man at war, armored, unfeeling. But now, as the storm finally broke, I understood something vital. Madison didn't just teach me about betrayal. She taught me about clarity. About never mistaking lust for loyalty, charm for love, or promises for truth. She showed me how easily a smile can hide a knife. And she taught me that when someone tries to take everything from you, you find out exactly who you are. I wasn't the man who broke under her lies. I wasn't the man she thought she could hollow out and leave behind. I was the man who stood, who fought, who refused to let betrayal define him. If I had one piece of advice for anyone who finds themselves where I was, it would be this: trust is precious, but it's also fragile. Don't hand it blindly. Watch closely. Listen to the silences between the words. And if you ever find yourself betrayed, don't drown in the pain. Let it sharpen you. Because betrayal isn't the end. It's a brutal kind of beginning. And as for Madison, she faded into the background, a whisper of scandal in a city that chews people like her up and spits them out. She thought she could take my fortune, my name, my soul. In the end, she walked away with nothing but the ashes of her own lies. I poured myself one last bourbon, raised the glass to the empty room, and let the silence settle around me. It was over. But I was just getting started.